This may not be what a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans have wanted to hear, but we have an update when it comes to Vancouver and the supposed Brendan Gallagher trade with Montreal that may be happening soon. At least, that's assuming a trade doesn't actually go down before this video becomes public on YouTube. Our source today is Rick Dhaliwal, who had an appearance on June 5th, Sunday, on Halford and Brough in the morning. There was a lot to talk about from the Donnie and Dolly Insider on Sportsnet 650's radio programming, from Vancouver's head coaching position to what Ryan Johnson has to do next, the next hirees for Vancouver, and what Manny Malhotra had to say in the media. But I wanted to focus on two elements of the Canucks conversation, both related to the Montreal Canadiens. We're going to be talking about Brendan Gallagher, and we're also going to be talking about Alex Burrows, because that is a conversation as well. Let's go over Canucks news summaries and his summary of the Rick Dhaliwal hit from Friday. So big shout out over to Canucks news summaries once more for getting this underway. But on the topic of Brendan Gallagher, Dhaliwal said this: Gallagher's agent has permission to facilitate a trade. The Vancouver Canucks are obviously an option for him. Gallagher's family lives in Vancouver, he played for the Giants, and his dad runs a hockey academy. He would also help the Vancouver Canucks culture. Now, this is the big thing that was talked about on the radio program. Rick Dhaliwal says that there is a chance the Vancouver Canucks might actually have to give up a late-round draft pick in order to acquire Gallagher. Him mentioning Vancouver in his exit interview caught a lot of people off guard as well. The fact that he straight up mentioned a destination despite the fact that he is already under contract with a different NHL team. Gallagher also lives in Tawasin in the off-season, and he has great practice habits and is a great pro on and off the ice. Now, that middle part is the most interesting element of the Gallagher conversation, because over the past few days, I feel like Vancouver Canucks fans have had this pre-established idea that any sort of a Gallagher trade to the Canucks would be Gallagher and a draft pick, a second or a third or something, to Vancouver in exchange for, like, future considerations or something. Or Vancouver would get Gallagher and a third in exchange for a fifth. There'd be some sort of an incentive for Vancouver to add Gallagher because Gallagher is a negative contract asset. He is a $6.5 million player who has another year on his deal, and that's not generally useful when you look at what Gallagher provides on the ice these days. Now, that's not to say he's a total bum. He scored a goal in the opening game he played against Tampa Bay in the playoffs, but he's definitely not as effective as he once was, and it's sad to see him go down this path where everything kind of slipped away so quickly. We've made so many videos talking about the downfall of Brendan Gallagher. But because he is in this state, I think there was always this pre-established idea Canucks fans had that said they'd be getting him and another asset for free. Only for Dhaliwal to go onto the radio and say, wait a minute, actually, the Canucks might actually have to give up a sixth or a fifth or something like that in order to get Gallagher. It's not going to be Gallagher plus incentive for Vancouver to make that work. And the reason for that is, simply put, the Vancouver Canucks actually see use out of Brendan Gallagher. Not to mention the fact that $6.5 million for 1 year isn't the same caliber of damning internal monetary contract for an NHL team as it was maybe 6 years ago, for example. We talk about teams that have weaponized their cap space over the years, the Arizonas with the Webbers and the Hosas and the Datsuks and all that. You talk about Montreal even, who had weaponized their cap space, taking on extra dollar amounts and double 50% salary retained trades in order to get draft capital. Now, it's a lot harder to do that because the NHL has so much cap flexibility. You have a much higher range of spending power for these NHL teams, which makes Gallagher at 1 year left at $6.5 million not as bad of a deal as it was many years ago. And further to that, because Vancouver actually has genuine reason to employ a guy like Gallagher, they see him as a valuable addition to their team, locker room-wise, culture-wise. There's a standard that Brendan Gallagher brings that Vancouver executives seem to value. That makes the trade a lot more difficult for the Canucks to actually just get extra stuff on for free. Montreal's looking at all the discourse saying, hey, seems like the Canucks actually really want this guy, so why not try to get a fifth or something out of them? They have a demand for him, so it's not like we're just giving him away for free because they're doing us a favor. Not. They seem to actually be interested in us doing them a favor by giving them Brendan Gallagher in the first place. So with that said, there are enough hometown connections and familial connections as well that make this Gallagher to Vancouver thing make sense. I'm just surprised that we have this sort of element popping up in the trade discourse now that says that Vancouver would actually have to give up a draft pick or something to make it work. It's not just going to be Gallagher and a second for nothing. Sorry, Gallagher, for internally devaluing you as much as I seem to have personally in all the videos that we've made, but I'm sure a lot of other Canucks fans have thought the same. And now there is another response that we are seeing amongst Canucks social media that says, like, hey, wait a minute, if the Canucks have to give up draft capital to get this guy, then why actually get him? Well, that's the thing. You want to be able to improve the culture and get other players to buy into what you're building in Vancouver, right? Gallagher is somebody that will help you do that. It's just, is the benefit of acquiring Gallagher so much so that you would actually feel comfortable giving up draft capital to get him? Or would you rather just let somebody else in free agency be that guy instead? A Luke Shen, a Troy Stetcher, who really knows? Speaking about old Vancouver Canucks that could potentially be coming back, Rick Dollywall's segment on Halford and Bruff also spoke about former Vancouver Canuck Dragon Slayer Alexandre Burrows. Here's the update on that. It's on the second slide over here. The update is essentially Alex Burrows is a young family in Montreal, and Dollywall also doesn't think the timing is right for him to move to Vancouver. Now, if Burrows were to be added to the Canucks and their staff, one may think that he would be a prime candidate to replace Manny Malhotra as the head coach of the Abbotsford Canucks. Right now, Burrows is an assistant coach and development coach for the Montreal Canadiens in the NHL, so he's not necessarily a Laval Rocket guy anymore. It's been this way for a few years now. Burrows, if he wants to take the next step in his coaching career, he could be a full-time head coach of an AHL team, go down that same Manny Malhotra path, and then potentially either work alongside of Malhotra as an assistant or get another opportunity elsewhere. Who really knows? The conversation on the radio essentially said that, yeah, this isn't really a good time for Burrows to break into a market like Vancouver. He's got a family in Montreal. He wants to stay committed there. That's totally fine. But then it's interesting because on Halbro, they end up getting into a conversation as to whether or not it's really appropriate to just start bringing on all these old Canucks of yesteryear. Oh, they've got Malhotra, they got Johnson, they got the Sedins, they're going to bring on Alex Burrows, and then they're going to get Kevin Bieksa, and then they're going to get Luongo, and everybody else. Like, there are so many names of guys that you can just say, oh, well, they were on the 2011 team, they were on the team in 2010. But I do agree with another point that Dollywall made on the program that essentially spoke about how players on the team in that time frame had a very specific standard and a culture that they set that the team wants to implement again once more. And since culture starts from the very top, if these are the kinds of guys that are used to that kind of culture that get brought into the Canucks organization, it does seem like a pretty good move to building a team that can last and that can stick together and grow alongside of each other. All the good, hot keywords that we always keep on bringing up. But with that said, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this Brendan Gallagher, Alex Burrows, Vancouver, Montreal thing? There are a number of ways we can take this discussion. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on, and bye.